hanging out here in the camper. Oh, packing up for our last trip of the season. Just looking around and kind of sad. It's fall, it's starting to get cooler. The season is definitely coming to a close. We've got this one last trip. We're hoping to see some pretty fall foliage, but it's kind of sad that we're going to have to put the camper away for the season, winterize it, and put it to bed really soon. So I'm just bringing out some things to the camper to get ready for our trip. And but one of the things I'm really glad about is that because I'm scrapbooking my trips, I still get to enjoy thinking about them even when it's winter and there's snow outside and it's cold and the camper is tucked away in storage. I can still remember these great trips that I took and maybe do a little bit of planning for next summer as well. So I've just been looking at our last couple trips out to the Finger Lakes of New York. We've only been there a couple of times, but already I know it's a favorite destination. And because it's not that far from New Hampshire, where our home base is, it only takes us about, I don't know, 5 hours or so to get out there. But it's a place that I know that we'll go back to again. And the first time we went, one of our favorite hikes was to Taughannock Falls. And I'll definitely post the video that we took when we took that hike. It was a pretty dry summer and the falls were kind of just a trickle, but the hike was still great and we really loved it. The last time we went last year, it was pouring rain, so the falls were really going strong. And we stopped and did the overlook, did some more touring around, and we came back to a campground near the falls and we went to the Inn at Taughannock to have our anniversary dinner. And so that's the layout that I just finished scrapbooking. And I was feeling a little creative. I wanted to have a little bit of fun with it. So I decided to get out some of my stamps, my inks, and get a little arty with it, playing around with some distress inks, a little bit of embossing. It's not stuff that I usually do very often, but it was super fun to just kind of play around with my arty stuff and get a little creative. So that's the layout I'm going to show you today, and I hope you really like it. And let me know what you think. Give me a thumbs up in the video if you like it, and let's take a look. You can see what I did. Come on. The inspiration for this layout came from this picture that we took of the inn after we had dinner. The inn was all lit up and the sky was just this amazing midnight blue, and I knew I wanted this picture to be the background of my layout. That sky looked like a great backdrop for a cut title, so I pulled out my silhouette and I wrote the title Celebrate in a kind of brush script font and cut that out. And now I'm going to pull out my embossing stuff. I hardly ever do this. I'm not really comfortable stamping. Stamping is something that I don't practice a lot, and I think it's one of those things you have to practice it in order to get really good at it. But I thought, why not? I'll pull things out, play around with it, and if it doesn't come out great, then I can always do something else. There's, no harm done. It amazed me I even remembered how to do this. I remember taking a stamping class a while ago, and I knew we needed to use the Versamark ink to make it sticky and then pour on the embossing powder. And this embossing powder actually somebody was giving away their stamping stuff, so I ended up with a whole bunch of embossing powders and inks and different supplies that I haven't really used very much, so I thought, why not? I'll pull it out. So this is like a lavender embossing powder. I don't have any special tools or trays, so I'm just using the piece of paper to fold it up and put it back in. I got powder everywhere, but that's okay. So I've got the powder on there and I'm pulling out my heat gun now, which is, again, not something I use very often. So it's like, all right, let's pull this thing out, see how this works, and we'll try it out. So I've got my tweezers there to hopefully prevent the title from blowing away. Again, I'm just experimenting here, and I think that's an okay thing to do. You don't have to be perfect at everything, and certainly My videos are not examples of excellent, perfect stampers, but you know what? I'm going to enjoy the process, and I think it came out pretty good. It's got this nice lavender coating on it, and it's ready to be my title. And I continued to want to play with my stamping stuff, so I pulled out my Distress Oxides, and now I'm using a technique I actually just learned in a Vicky Booten class I took. She teaches these amazing album classes, and I've been really enjoying taking them. And this was from a class she did in creating some stamped embellishments by first using some Distress Oxide ink and running it through a stencil, just kind of making blobs of colors, some dark, some light, blending colors together. So I picked a couple of my Distress Oxide inks. I picked the Dusty Concord, like a purple, and then I'm also going to use the Speckled Egg, which is like a light blue, and kind of blend them together. There'll be more blue in some places, there'll be more of the purple in some places, and the idea is I want some variations of color with the stencil also showing up. And then I'm going to stamp over them some flowers. And those flowers will be colored by the purple and blue ink that's underneath it. So that's what I'm going to do next. I'm finishing up and coloring in this section of the paper with the different colored inks. And then what I'll end up with is just a different colored background that I'm going to be able to stamp on top of. All right, so I'm pulling out these Altenew stamps. I don't even remember where I got them. I've had them for a while and I've never used them. So they're these pretty flowers. And I'm just going to pull out my Ranger Archival black ink, and I'm going to stamp these flowers on top of the background. And some of the stamps will end up more in the blue area, so the flowers will be more blue. Some of them will be in the purple area. They'll end up being a little more purple, but they'll all have kind of the different Distress Oxide ink background in them depending on where I stamp them there. And I'm going to do a few of these big flowers, and then I'm going to swap it out and pick the smaller flower. I have no idea at this point how many of these flowers I might use on this layout. I might use a bunch, I might use not many, or maybe none at all. I'm really just playing, and it's so much fun to just play without any, commitment that I would have to use these on anything. Just playing to play with my supplies and see what I can do and see what happens. So I don't have a die for these, so I'm just fussy cutting them out. And I'll start with some of the big ones and then cut out some of the smaller ones. And then we'll see if I'm able to use these on the layout, what they might look like. So that's what they look like. I'm just going to cut the rest of these out, and then we can start building the layout with what we have and see what we can make of it. Again, this is just a fun time to play around with my supplies and see what happens. All right, so I have printed the photos I'm going to use on this layout on one sheet of 8.5 by 11 photo paper, and I use Canva to lay out my pictures so that I can print multiple photos on one sheet of paper. And I made a video tutorial where I showed you how I do that. You can easily use frames in Canva to size your pictures to just the size you need them and print them out on one sheet of paper. So I'll link that video here and in the description below if you want to check out how I do that. But I have one large photo that is a full-size photo. It's just a little bit smaller than what will fit in my albums because I think I'm going to put a border of some background paper around it. And then I have this small photo of my husband and I at dinner that I'm going to use. There's another photo on that print layout that I'm going to use in a pocket next to this layout when I put it in my album. And I may print a few more pictures from that day as well. I had this purple pattern paper in my stash, and I'm going to use the center section of this to back my photo, so it will be a mat for that large photo, so you'll see it as a border on the edge of the page. So I'm just going to trim off the branding strip, and then I'm going to cut out the middle of this paper, leaving off the distressed edges. I may use some of the edges later for different parts of the page, but for the mat of the photo, I'm just going to pull the center of this to be the full size of that layout. All right, so now I'm going to start building this page. I'm going to adhere down my large photo in the middle, and then I've got some of that extra paper there I might use as part of the embellishment. So there, I'm going to lay down that picture right in the center, and then I need to decide where some other things are going to go. So I know I want that title that I cut out with my silhouette and embossed up in the top left corner where there's a good chunk of that midnight blue sky. However, I wanted like a place for the title to rest so it didn't look like it was floating up there all by itself. So I trimmed out a little strip of this pattern paper, and I'm trying to figure out how I can make like a little landing place, and then that will give me a place to put some embellishments as well. I also found this little scrap of acetate, and I really liked the sparkle that the metallic silver dots had on it. It really felt kind of celebratory since we were celebrating our anniversary. So I add that to the little shelf for the title. And so I'm just trimming that out with my scissors. And then I'm using a little bit of my dot adhesive on the acetate, just on the top where it's going to be hidden under that strip, so you won't be able to see the adhesive. And I'll add in that strip, and checking out the title, seeing what I need to do. So I'm going to use my dot adhesive on the title too. I think I contemplated using liquid glue for a second there, but I was worried that would be way too messy and it might end up showing up on my photo. So the dot adhesive, it's pretty safe. That dot adhesive is my go-to adhesive. It's pretty forgiving. It will let you reposition paper often before it really sticks down. So it gives me a little bit of wiggle room, but it's also very forgiving when I'm using it on small embellishments as well. Pretty easy for me to manipulate. All right, so I have another piece of that acetate, and I've got a bigger spot down there that I want to kind of, again, use as a landing place for that second photo of us at dinner. And I'm just going to make it just a hair bit smaller. It was a bit big. And there we go. So now we've got a nice little shelf for the picture to sit on. And we'll stick that down. So you can still see the background photo in there, but we've got spots for the title and spots for the picture. Now I'm starting to pull out those stamped flowers. And as I'm laying them on the layout, I like them, but I'm worried that they're just a bit too contrasty from the really beautiful kind of dark photo in the background. And I'm feeling like some of those big flowers are just too much. I really try to use them. I'm arranging them in different areas, and looking back on it, it doesn't look horrible, and I probably could have used them, but at the time it just wasn't really working for me. So then I dug into my stash and I pulled out some of my Maggie Holmes parasol collection. I have some ephemera. Some of them are vellum. We'll see through. There's some really pretty delicate stuff, and I'm looking through it to see if I can find something that might not be so, I guess, harsh. The contrast with the stamped flowers was a bit too much for me there. And I liked this blue vellum flower. It kind of drew that kind of blue of the sky in. And at this point, I felt like it was starting to come together. That blue flower was just what I wanted. And now I'm going to start to add some other embellishments to this. So I stick the flower down. I put adhesive on it because I'm thinking about putting a sticker on the top. So I'll pull out my parasol sticker book, and I found this phrase, "I love you endlessly," which seems perfect for an anniversary layout. So I'll put that on the flower, and then I'm just looking for some other possible embellishments to put on the page. I've got a gold heart. We'll add that one in. And just continuing to look and see. There's another set of phrases. And I found a "you and me" Thought that was also a great one for an anniversary layout. And then I'm pulling one of those stamped flowers in again, and I think I'm going to use that one in the top. So yay, I used one of the stamped flowers that I made. And now I have just adding some bling to this layout to finish it off. I've got these pretty kind of sparkly three-dimensional hearts that I'm sticking on there. This one did not want to go the right direction. It took me a while to get that to be face up. Adding a couple to the bottom and to the top embellishment cluster near the title, just to add a little sparkle, a little pizzazz. And now I'm going to look for some sequins, and so I pulled out some sequins, and then I'm going to need some liquid glue to put those down. So I'll grab my liquid glue and my tweezers and lay those down. All right, just the last sequins, and then this layout is done. Celebrating our anniversary at the Inn at Taughannock, using a few fun inking and arty techniques, and I'm pretty happy with the way it came out. It never hurts to play with your stash, so I encourage you all to play with your supplies and see what you can come up with. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and hopefully I will see you back here soon for some more camping scrapbooking fun. Bye everyone!